and I'm going to officially start with an opening prayer. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Loving God, who birthed creation from the nothingness of space, kindling life where all was empty, turning chaos into grace. When we feel confused and fruitless, dawn upon our restless night. Give us faith's imagination, hope's renewing, love's delight. Amen. And you could hear that rhymed because it was a hymn. Reed is very good at finding opening prayers, and that was the opening prayer for our most recent meeting. So that was Loving God Who Birthed Creation. So one of the reasons that you are here tonight is to learn how to save money and energy by learning this online tool. Another reason is because this will be an EDOW diocese-wide effort to make the first steps toward carbon neutrality. So one thing that we really hope is that even those who are not able to make it here this evening will be able to learn how to use this tool because it will be recorded and housed on the School for Learning and Leadership for the diocese. So thank you for praying with me, and I'm just going to give you a very short sermon. I practice these, they are very short. And here goes. The great commandment is central to creation care. You shall love the Lord with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might, and your neighbor as yourself. We all know this one. We take care of creation because the Lord created all parts of this fragile earth, not just us, and called creation good. If we love God wholeheartedly, it is our duty to take responsibility to respect and care for God's creation. We are also commanded to love our neighbors. Several of the Big Ten reinforce love of neighbor. Do not steal, do not covet, do not bear false witness. When we waste earth's resources, we are not only disrespecting God, we are breaking faith with our neighbors, greedily borrowing against the future, taking more than our fair share, and justifying our actions with worldly excuses. But all of you who have come here today are trying to make a difference. With Christ as our strength, together we can face the truth. We put love into action by using resources fairly. Taking steps toward carbon neutrality will help us slow climate change, help protect our neighbors from worsening storms, wildfires, droughts, floods, extreme temperatures, and other disasters. So I commend you, siblings in Christ, for coming here tonight to take the first steps towards saving precious resources by doing this simple online energy audit. You are not only proving yourselves to be good stewards of your own parishes, but also, in the wider sense, taking care of God's creation. You have decided to think about the future, not to take more than your fair share, and discern a path forward with God's help. Thank you. Our siblings in creation might also thank us if we could hear. The Bible teaches that God's creation does speak. The trees, the waves, the mountains, the deer, the lilies, and so on. Even that great old story of Balaam's ass. If we listen, the Balaam's ass is telling us to stop and change course. So thank you for listening. All right. So that was a 2-minute sermon. If anybody asks you what creation care is, now you have at least something to say. It's now 7:10, and we'll turn over to Maddie Smith from IPL-DMV to give us the meat of this webinar to learn how to use these online tools. Welcome, Maddie, and thank you.
Thank you, Deacon Melissa. I'm Maddie Smith. My pronouns are they, them, and Like Melissa said, I'm with Interfaith Power and Light DMV, and I recognize many people I know on this call or have emailed with. And I'm just really excited about this and excited to be here with you all. For those who don't know, Interfaith Power and Light DMV is a local grassroots faith climate organization. And so we've worked with Episcopalians in EDOW for a long time, so I know we know many of you in your parishes. But we really want to be here as a resource for you and to work with the Creation Care team to help Episcopal churches with anything from sort of the physical building stuff we'll be talking about today to, many of the other, things like advocacy that we do, supporting green teams, like all of that. So we would love to be in touch about any of that. But tonight, what we're going to focus on is this this really exciting study that I can't say enough about how excited I am, but it's been such a joy to work with the Episcopal Diocese of Washington's Creation Care team. And this sort of came out of, some of like hearing from the Creation Care team folks that the Episcopal Church has this really lofty and impressive goal of what is it, net zero by 2030 or carbon neutrality by 2030. And I think the way that people define some of those things can be different. Um, and then, my learning as IPL's clean energy shepherd, like what I do all day, every day is figure out how to help congregations like do these sorts of energy saving products and projects and figure out how to utilize the existing programs and incentives that exist and also how do we support congregations in doing things that traditionally have been expensive and hard and how do we lower those barriers. And so what I really want to emphasize for folks tonight is this is not about oh my gosh, my parish has to do this thing now because, we were told we had to, but really I want to be your partner in saving money and energy in your parish that you could use for your ministries elsewhere in a time when I think a lot of our churches are going to be called to step up um, in different ways. So I don't know, Abbott, do you want to say a brief word about the resolution since you were sort of the um, guys behind that? Just make sure we're all starting from the same
Yeah,
spot.
it's the diocesan convention in the end of January, several weeks ago. The convention passed a resolution encouraging all parishes to participate in an energy usage study. That is the better program. The idea is that the more parishes that participate, they can themselves, as you're saying, find energy saving tools, but also the more parishes that participate in the diocese, it's going to provide more information for all parishes to enjoy the results. So we want to encourage as many people to participate as possible. Thanks.
Yeah, and so the goal of what we'll be talking about tonight is we are going to collect as much information from individual churches in the diocese about your energy usage and take a look at not only what can be done to support individual buildings that may have because all our buildings are different and all of our parishes are in different spots, and just looking at what can we do for each individual building, but also where is the diocese at as a whole, and what would energy savings, what would tackling that from both an individual church perspective and the diocese as a whole, what would that look like? Um, and so my computer is about to die, so I'm going to plug it in super fast. Abbott, do you want to add one or two things about the vote, etc., while I do that?
Had one or two, maybe I'm not sure what the invitation was, but yeah, obviously I'm trying to reaffirm the point that the national church has encouraged all dioceses and parishes to be carbon neutral by 2030, and I'm not quite sure what that all means, other than that we have to be taking steps, and even if they're baby steps at the beginning, to head in that direction. And obviously we have a world out there that seems to be moving in the opposite direction. So it's important for our church to step up as a leader among the faith community to show that indeed we find these goals meaningful and that we are taking steps to progress. Maddie, turn it back over to you.
Yes, thank you, Abbott, for filling in quickly. So what we're going to do to be able to do this is, I know a lot of people are familiar with the term energy audit, and like what I think of when I think of that is something that costs a lot of money and is going to tell us about how much more money we need to spend to be able to do something. There are some incentives in different areas to help pay for something like a physical energy audit, but like what we're talking about today is a super nifty online tool created by the Department of Energy. And I know people will ask this, but the tool is still online and up and running. And my hope is that it is nerdy enough to stay that way. Um, and so what this tool does, it's very cool. I'm very excited about it. What it will do is like really directly look at both individual buildings and a group of buildings and compare them all to each other. So the idea is that we would get, as big a sample size as possible out of the 80 or 90 different churches in the Episcopal Diocese of Washington and really look at them. And what it will do is it will spit out specific energy upgrade recommendations ranging from small things like, light bulbs, although changing all the light bulbs in one building could be a lot, up to like, thinking about upgrading your HVAC or something else, which would be a very big project. But it would give us information about where everyone is at and like what would be needed both for the group as a whole and for the individual participating parishes. Okay. So we're all, and some people might be familiar with another tool called Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which we will be also using. Um, and that is mainly because for whatever reason, the way the Better tool is set up is that you can't individually plug your building's information in and get results back. You have to do it as a group. So that's like also why the effort of doing this in a group, because they don't have baseline data for houses of worship yet. And so what we're going to do, first of all, is upload everything into Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which is really will tell you sort of that's the place where we log your energy usage, and I'll go through this in slides. But then the Better tool is what then I'll upload the whole group to and like spit out reports from that. But the very sort of first step I want to talk about is, what folks will be required to do to participate in this is get a hold of the last 12 months of your energy bills for your building, all, electric and gas meters. And I know some folks probably have fuel oil as well, or solar, like all of that would need to be gathered. And then also just the square footage of your building. So those are the two main things we'll need. What I want to do really quick is put a link in the chat to a Google Doc that has sort of, I'm calling it our how-to guide. So, and we don't worry about like reading all of this right now. I know for some folks it might be helpful to sort of follow along. For other folks, just bookmark this. We'll also send it around in a follow-up email, so don't feel like you need to like click on it now or take everything in.
I've got a question,
Okay.
Matt. Um,
Yeah.
when when you mentioned the last 12 months, and depending on the timing of everybody's utility bills, would it not be better to have a defined time range like January 2024 to December 2024?
Well, the good thing is
Rather
that
than
as
on,
long as you include a full 12 months worth of data, it could be, they could be off a month or so, but as long as it includes a full 12 months and basically all times of the year is covered, the system can like still compare them and work with them.
Okay.
So for efficiency's sake, I'm not going to worry too much about that, but you will need a full 12 months, 11 months and 20 days. It will not work. You need a full 12 months worth.
I ask because previous benchmarking studies I've been involved in have a defined
Mm,
range rather than the last whatever. So
yeah. So, and that may be due to like if your parish has to follow, like some folks are already doing this because their parish is required to by district law or Montgomery County law. But for other folks, we can be a little less stringent because of the way the Better tool works, which is nice.
okay,
But the very first thing we're going to talk about is really briefly, I want to make sure that everyone understands their energy bills. And that I know that for the folks on this call, you may not be the person that, and you're probably not the person that pays, your church energy bills or even necessarily looks at them. But I think it's really helpful for folks to understand sort of what you're looking for and what information we need in order to do this. So here is an example Pepco bill from an actual congregation. Um, and I'm going to go through when I was putting this together, I realized there are 4 different electric utilities that people receive electricity from in the diocese, which is kind of amazing. So the first one is Pepco, which most DC and Montgomery County folks and some Prince George's folks will have. This is different from the other utilities in that they charge you based on peak, intermittent peak, and off peak usage. When you're looking for the information that you will need to be entering for this, you want to look for total use kilowatt hours or total kilowatt hours. So like that's what you're looking for on your bill each month is the total kilowatt hours, which is abbreviated as kWh. You can see that there's also demand on here, which is measured in kilowatts, which is not what you want. So you want to make sure you look for kilowatt hours. And this is just an example of if I was looking at this Pepco bill, most of this stuff you can ignore. You're really looking for this at the bottom, the total use kilowatt hours. So like the very first step is to gather all of your bills together, and then like this is how you will look for the exact information you'll need to enter or that you'll need to send to folks who can enter it for you. Here's the second page of next page of a Pepco bill. And you can just see like so this total number 31265 kilowatt hours, that's the total use kilowatt hours number. And so this is you can also find this here in the charge section of your Pepco bill, but I think it's easier to look here. Just a public service announcement. When you go look at your church's electricity bill and gas bill, if you see sales tax on it, that's a problem because you should be exempt as a nonprofit religious institution. So, but what I've discovered is a lot of people are paying sales tax when they shouldn't be. And so let me know if that's the case when you look at it. I just wanted to flag that for folks since, you'll be looking at your church's energy bills. Okay, so here's an example of a SMECO bill for the folks in Southern Maryland. As you can see, it's a little bit simpler, a little less information to try to deal with. Here, just right here, you can see the kilowatt hours for the total kilowatt hours for the month. Here, they're comparing it to what you used last year, which can be helpful, but you want to make sure you pick the month for the current year and not last year's. You can also see here, this can be really helpful as they can show you the actual numbers of what it looks like across the full year. So in this case, you might only need to find one bill to find all of your information. For other folks, like the graphs don't have the numbers on them, like Pepco, and you'll have to get like every month's worth of bill. And that may be confusing, but I'm happy to answer questions about that. The other thing is if you just Google like your utilities name, sample electric bill or sample gas bill, you usually can pull up a website, a page on their website that will go through and say how to read your bill and how to understand it. I'm always happy to help with that as well, and I'll put my contact info in the chat afterwards. Okay, so here's Potomac Edison. We probably have some folks in the corner of sort of the upper parts of Montgomery County that have Potomac Edison. Again, totally different electric bill, ways to read it, etc. What you can see though here is this kilowatt hour used. That's where you would look. And here it's a sample bill, so everything is 0, which isn't particularly helpful. But you can see this kWh used. That's what you're going to be looking for. Total kWh, kWh used, total usage, kWh, those are all the things that you will be looking for. Sometimes they give you a lot more information that's less helpful, but that's what you actually need. Okay, and here's an example BGE bill. So here you can see also they make it really easy to see what your total kilowatt hour usage is, and here they have a nice graph where you can see what it has been over time. Again, here if you look under taxes and fees, and the BGE and Pepco bills are from actual congregations I've talked to. I've just anonymized them. The other two were just sample bills because they were easy to find on their websites. But here you can see state tax, which is sales tax, the 6% state tax or sales tax. That's what you want to look for and make sure you're not paying. And if you are, please talk to me and we can help get you off of that and get you a refund in some cases for up to 2 years of sales tax that you've incorrectly paid because you're actually a nonprofit. You think they would know these things, but it seems to be a big problem. Okay, and then for folks that have gas in the area, I believe most folks will have Washington Gas. If I'm incorrect on that, please let me know, and I would be happy to like walk through or send an example of how to read another bill. I think if anybody has BGE for gas, it's fairly simple because it's on the same bill as your electric. So here's where you have to be really careful with the units, whereas with electricity, you don't have to be as careful. So if you have Washington Gas, on your bill, you will probably see, it'll probably look like this, the second page. And here, in this case, they have 2 gas meters. Most folks will probably only have 1 here. But you can see they give you your total usage and consumption in 2 different units because that's not confusing at all. So this CCF is 1 unit, and then therms or TH is another unit. And so when you are inputting your data, you want to make sure that you choose the right unit. And I'll show you sort of what that means a little bit later.
Which one do you
Okay.
want, the therms or the CCF?
It doesn't matter when
Oh.
you're entering it. You just have to make sure you use the right number with the right units. I think BGE pretty much only gives it to you in therms. Washington Gas does both, which I think is confusing. But you'll have the opportunity to enter it in either unit. You just want to choose the right number to go with the right unit. And if you have questions about that, please feel free to ask me. I look at a lot of energy bills, and it's something I enjoy doing, especially when I can help our folks with it. Okay. And then I think just the last, this is unrelated to this slide, but just the last couple things I wanted to say about information you'll need to enter your information or to enter your data is if you have solar on, if you have a net metered solar system on your church, which I know some folks do, and if you have solar, it probably is net metered. That's a little bit more complicated to enter, and so I'm not going to go over that today, but I will gladly help people with it or do it for you. Some folks, like I said, are already doing this as a result of state law or county law where they are. The other thing is if you have, does anybody here know they have fuel oil powered, like a fuel oil powered boiler in their church?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, yeah. So the way fuel oil, you don't get a set bill of like this is what we used every month. Instead, you'll sort of have the information that's like this day we got a delivery and it was for this much. And so you'll need that information. It's just, the way you log fuel oil usage is just a little different from like your gas and electric utilities. And then I also just want to say, so the other thing we'll need is a fairly, um, you know, accurate number for the square footage of your building. And that is because, if the number's not accurate or it's way off, then we won't have a good sense of what the actual energy efficiency of your building is. Um, I know a lot of old buildings don't have that number like straight away, or that you don't have blueprints that have it on there. In that case, do your best to try to find a number as accurate as possible. There are, some folks can get a number that's mostly accurate off of like a certificate of occupancy, state or county tax records. Although what I've discovered is that in DC, those are not very accurate. But if you're in DC, we probably already know close, like, what some of your, like what your square footage might be. So that will be like some of that you'll be able to find really easy. For other folks, if you're struggling to find something, please feel free to reach out to me. A rough manual measurement of your building like would also be fine. In fact, like if you have like a retired engineer or architect in your congregation, those could be good people who could maybe help with that as well.
Maddie, do you want the square footage footprint of the building, or if there are multiple floors, do you measure each floor?
Yeah, we need the square footage of basically like what are all the like areas in your building where people can walk that are like heated and cooled. Like you wouldn't include a crawl space, but you would include something like a basement. But if people have specific questions about that, feel free to reach out to me and we can talk because I know everybody's building is going to be a little different. And we're not looking for like something that an architect would sign off on like this is the exact square footage of our church, but something that's just as accurate as possible so that we can like look at the like real energy usage of your building compared to some other things.
Maddie,
Um,
I got another question. Um,
yeah.
we have a separate parish hall that has its own meter, its own electric, everything. Do you want that included as well? It's
Great
not
question, because I know you're not the
part of the
only
parish.
folks in that situation either. So what would be best is if they're separately metered, I would input them as two separate buildings. If they're separately metered and you have separate energy usage for each building, I
Okay.
would input both of them. If you want both of them to be included in the study and to get, recommendations back for some
Okay.
people have
We
separate.
we have the opportunity of adding a building
Mm-hmm.
in the web survey. Okay. Good
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah, we can definitely, I would include both if you can get all the information, like I think that would be best. Some folks, I've encountered folks before that have multiple buildings that are on the same meter, and I talk a little bit about this in the how-to guide. But if you're on the same meter, then what we'll need to do is just combine the square footage of both buildings because we're not able to separate out the energy usage for each part of the building. So we'll have to treat it for these purposes like one building, which
Okay.
isn't ideal, but it's really the only way we can do this.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so what I want to do now is talk about where you'll actually be entering this data if you can. And what I want to say first is that we have some great volunteers on the Creation Care Committee who want to help folks with this. Melissa looks really excited about it too. Um, so like if you're looking at this and thinking, oh my gosh, this is too much. Like, I don't think we can do this. I'm hoping that won't be the case, but please let us know, how we can help. I think it will be like, we obviously don't have capacity collectively to enter the data individually for 80 parishes, but we do have the capacity to help folks with this as needed. And so I think the default would be if you're willing to do this data entry and do that, then that would be preferred. But also, we absolutely don't want that to be a barrier to be able to help your parish. And we want to make sure that, everybody can participate. So if that's the case, then you'll be sending our Creation Care team email, which maybe Michelle can put in the chat and is also included in the how-to guide that I shared in the chat earlier and will send out to everyone. You'll want to send the 12 months of energy bills and your square footage and obviously your church name and address. If you're feeling up to the challenge, which I'm imagining, some folks will be, and as I said, a lot of Episcopal churches are already doing this, here is sort of what we're going to do collectively. So how many folks are already familiar with Energy Star Portfolio Manager? Elizabeth, yes, I know you are because we've worked on it together. Okay, so and this, again, I'll say, I think there's a lot of uncertainty right now with the federal government, and this is, something that has been around for a long time, that a lot of state and local governments use to implement their building energy legislation. And so we're going to use it, if it goes away, we will reevaluate that. I don't anticipate that happening, but we can see, we can't predict the future for sure. So this is sort of what the homepage of Energy Star Portfolio Manager looks like. If your church doesn't already have an account, what you're going to do is click create an account. And I'll just add that, so folks who are already doing this are probably churches in DC and Montgomery County that are above 25,000 square feet, because in those places it's required to do this by law. So in that case, you actually have less work to do because your building is already doing this. We just need to get that data shared with us, and there's an easy way to do that. If you're not sure whether your building is included on that, let me know and I can tell you because I have a good list of everyone. So what you're going to do when you create an account is you're going to go to add a property, and I'm just going to add a fake Episcopal church, for lack of a better term, here for folks. So we can kind of go walk through the process, see how it is. We're recording this so that when you do this, if you want to go back and pause it as you work through it, we can do that. So where it says select a property type, what you're going to want to look for is worship facility. Oh, that didn't work. So we scroll. Here it is. So worship facility. And for some folks, you may have a school or a preschool that's part of your building or part of your property. For these purposes, we really are looking at the parts of your building that serve as a worship facility, which is sort of the main purpose of all of our buildings. And so you want to say, how many physical buildings do you consider part of your property? So you can say, I have one church building, it's all connected, it's all on 1 meter. If you have more than one, like what was said earlier, you have your church sanctuary building and you have a parish hall, then you would click more than one and enter 2 here. For this, I'm going to select 1. And then what is your property's construction status? Pretty much for you, like for all of us, this is going to be its existing. For this, I'm going to click test property because I'm not creating an actual building that has an actual address, but everyone else will select existing. And then here it will prompt you to enter a lot of information. The things with the red asterisks or the like stars here are what's required. So you'll want to like make a name, so we can say test EDOW church, where are you located, address, what year was your building built? If you don't know exactly, I think it's okay to approximate for these purposes. And then here is where you'll be entering your square footage of your building, where it says gross floor area. And they so this is where you'll enter that number. And if you have questions about this, please let me know and I can talk.
Maddie, if
Irrigated
you have a
area.
I have a question on
go
that.
ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
When was the building built? Um, the first part was built in 1700, the next part in 1800, the next part in 1900. What do you want us to do?
For this, for our purposes, this is less ideal. Like we don't need this to be exact. So I think you could choose, what's the biggest portion of that building and when was it built? That's probably what I would choose. But don't get hung up on this because it's not important for our purposes. If you were doing this to comply with a law, that would be a different story. But for that, we don't need to worry about for our purposes. Occupancy, always select 100% unless there's like a vacant part of your building that is never used for absolutely anything, which is probably not the case. Like even if it's seldom used, it's probably still used. And so you still want to select 100% occupancy for and that would describe an operating worship facility. These you can ignore. Um, These you can click to, if these are included for any of your properties, like if you have a K-12 school or you have a preschool or daycare center, but for our purposes for this study, that's less important. So don't worry about getting these exactly right. If you know that your energy usage, you're charged for a bunch of lights in your parking area, you might want to click that. But again, I would not worry too much about this because for our purposes, so Energy Star Portfolio Manager can do a lot of different things. For our purposes, we're really just using it to log your energy usage. We're not going to use it to pursue an Energy Star certification or to comply with a law. Some people are already doing that. But in this case, we really just need your address, your gross floor area. That's really the most important thing to fill out here to make sure is accurate. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is show you when we have a congregation in this system, what it looks like. So I'm going to share my screen again, and a big thank you to Teresa from Church of the Epiphany in DC who said that I could use them as an example here. And again, we have their information because they're already required to do this by DC law. And so that's great because we can kind of see how this has worked for other people. So here is sort of what the main page looks like once you create your building in Portfolio Manager. When you enter enough years of data, it will give you an Energy Star score, but that's not something that we're going to worry about because for this purposes, we're only entering 1 year of data. You, of course, would be welcome to go back and enter more if you really want to see sort of how that usage has changed over time, multiple years, but that's not required for what we're doing. And so you can see, they'll calculate some metrics. This is source energy use intensity, which is one way to measure how energy efficient your building is or not. The thing that you all will most need to understand is this energy tab. You can also use Portfolio Manager for water. Feel free to do so. That's not something we're focusing on here. So if you go to the energy tab, you can see under here, if you scroll down far enough, meters. So this Church of the Epiphany in DC, they have one electric grid meter and one gas meter. And you can see they have different energy types, etc. So if we click on the electric grid meter, and they've been doing it for many years, and so we can look at sort of everything. Let's say we start, 2020, let's start 2021 and look at this. So you can see that what they've been doing since for quite a long time is they enter the kilowatt hours used and the cost of what they paid for electricity that month. The cost is not required for what we're doing, but if you want to enter it, it is helpful. The better tool will calculate an average cost for what you've paid based on historical energy rates and current energy rates. But if you have the exact numbers of what you paid, that's great because they can use that. If you see, so what these all have is start date, end date, usage in kilowatt hours. So again, that's the unit that we're going to be using for electricity. Total cost. You don't need to enter demand or demand costs unless you really want to. We're much more interested in the kilowatt hour usage. And then the way that you'll enter these, so you can see, there's a lot that's already been entered here. If I go to sort of add a new entry, you see it's smart enough to take, the last entry and put it on the day for your next entry. So like that can help you sort of speed things up as you're entering. And then when you have your bills and you can see, okay, here's my kilowatt hour usage for this month, you put it here. Here's my cost for that month, I put it here. And then you can keep doing that and keep adding another entry and keep doing that for 12 months worth. And then when you get to the bottom, you'll click save. I'm going to delete these because they're not actually needed. Yeah, that's electricity. And then if we go back and look at gas, we can see, so for gas, and when you set up a meter, you'll be able to choose all of this information. So you can see the usage in therms. So they're taking the therms number from their Washington gas bill and putting it here. You could also make this say CCF, which is cubic something feet. That's escaping me right now. But that is, another option you could do. You just need to make sure your numbers match up with your units. So how you'll add a meter is, say you've just created your building and you need to add a meter. You'll click add a meter here on the energy page. And what sort of energy do you want to track? Please select all that apply. So if you wanted to add an electric meter, you would do this. You can see it says purchased from the grid. For everybody will be doing this. Some people will also need to add a solar meter. If that's the case, I can help with that. Generated from on-site solar panels. And some folks already are doing that, and if not, I can help. Natural gas is down here. Some people might have propane. That's less common from what I've seen in congregations. If you have fuel oil, it's almost always this number 2. Apparently there are different types of fuel oil. Number 2 is the most common for sure, used for these types of buildings in this region is what I've learned. And so if we go to create those meters, then like, so let's, for example, you know, do one and then I'll delete it later so it doesn't mess up Epiphany stuff. But if, for example, if we create a new natural gas meter, this is what it looks like. And you'll want to go the date, you know, the date meter became active needs to just be sometime in the past. If it's in use, which it will be, you'll keep this. And here's where you'll select the units. So that's where you would, this is 100 cubic feet. That's right. You'll want to select that or therms. And there's some other things in here, but those won't be on your energy bills. So that's sort of how Portfolio Manager works. You know, when you have everything uploaded in Portfolio Manager, you'll need to share it with me, and there's instructions for how to do that. It's relatively simple in the document. Basically, you'll just search my username under sharing and look for me and share it with me. And that's just so, and read only, you know, is fine because I don't need to change your data. I just need to be able to see it. I know I'm running a little bit out of time, and so I wanted to make sure we just really look at what a better report is and like sort of show you the information that we're hoping to be able to get for your parish and show you how you can benefit. The focus of this call today is not all of the different resources that like we can help you with in order to do these projects in your parishes. That we could do a whole nother call on that, and maybe that's something that we do later on in this process. But I spend a lot of time directing people to those different programs and resources. And so like that's my goal, is that when we get these reports for every church, that then we can um, you know, look at actually doing some things that will save you energy and money. And like anybody who participates in this will get like a time to talk with me, a consultation, you know, once we have all of the information. So really quick, I want to look at better, which I don't, it has a fun acronym. It's like building energy something, something, something. So, for example, and this is, you know, this is also from Church of the Epiphany in DC, which is like an interesting building because it's really old. And so I think like there will be some similarities and some differences between what you all will see in your parishes. So really quickly, this is what the Better Report looks like. I'm not going to go through every single detail because we'll like I'll be setting up a time with everyone later to go over their reports individually for those that participate. But I just wanted to sort of show you the like power of what we can like what the information we can get for you all from this free tool. It's obviously not the same as a physical energy audit where you have a professional come out to your building, but this is also free. So I think there's, you know, something to be said for that. So here, based on, you know, the modeling that was run, the system is estimating, you know, there's a potential cost savings per year that could be generated for the church of about like almost $17,000. And here's the potential energy savings in kilowatt hours. Obviously, I'm not expecting that we will be able to do all of the projects that would lead to this money. But, you know, when the system finds that there's a chance, there's like a like chance for potential cost savings that big, you know, there are probably projects that you can do that will have an immediate impact. It's also estimating that currently most of the savings could come from electricity usage, reducing that, and not reduce, like some of it could come from fossil fuel usage. And so really we're looking at, you know, what exactly how your billing would go about this. So just really quickly, and I'm not going to go through all of this, but it comes up with some specific energy efficiency recommendations for the building that are in detailed below. What this is doing is comparing it to the whole group. So, and I'll mention that I've done this already with a large group of houses of worship across the region. Not all Episcopal churches, but like, you know, all buildings that are worship facilities. In this case, they're estimating that most of the savings would come from reducing the electricity base load, which is basically everything you're using in your building that uses electricity that's not related to the weather. So like your heating and cooling usage of energy will go up and down as the weather goes up and down. All of this gray here, that's everything that's not related to the change in weather that's being used in your building. And in this case, it's a lot more than what a lot of buildings are using. So basically the way Better works, and I saw this pop up in the chat, is that for the exact dates of your energy bills that you enter, it will compare the weather where you are located in your location, like based on your energy usage, and it will see, how did your energy usage change as a result of the weather or not? Like what's related to the weather and what's not, what's related to cooling specifically, what's related to heating, and what's sort of the base load, that gray area we talked about. And this is all sort of like, math, physics, statistics stuff of like looking at these change point models. We can I'll go over that with everyone individually. But just like the way the system works is it looks at what is related to energy, what's related to the weather, and what's not. And like as a result of that, what are some of the like suspected things that you could do in your building as a result of that? So you could see in this case, the amount of fossil fuel they're using that's not related to the weather is better than a lot of people. But this change point is really low, which means that like it's getting turned on at a higher temperature than a lot of folks as the temperatures go down. So like this, and I, am going through this very quickly, but it will also come up with a whole long list of energy efficiency measures that we can talk about specifically for your building. And then the plan is to then introduce you to programs, incentives, and financing that could help you do those things. I know that for a lot of folks, the money is absolutely like prevents folks from being able to do these problems, like being able to deal with this. And so also what we've been kind of thinking about on the Creation Care Committee is like, if we can get a good look of where everyone is at, then perhaps we can go to the diocese or we can go to another funder and say, this is how much, energy and money our parishes could be saving. Here's the funding gap to make that happen. Like, how do we fill that? Okay, I'm going to stop there for now. I know people probably have a lot of questions, and I went through that fairly fast, and it's fairly technical. I'm always available to answer questions by email. I know some folks might have to go in a few minutes. I'm happy to stay on and answer questions as long as people are here and have them. Again, I just really want to reiterate that like we want to be your partners in helping your parish save energy and money. Yes, we'll email everything out to folks and we'll send the recording as well as my contact info and the instructions. Like we really want to be your partner in saving energy and money that would be better spent than paying Pepco or BGE or Washington Gas. I know everyone would immediately find a way to use that money that's not paying, a for-profit utility. And, you're going to be helping the environment and, your community as well. Yeah, please, I would love to answer any questions that folks
Again,
have.
When do you want this done?
So I think, we're being realistic about how long this is going to take, as well as recognizing that, not every church is here today, and that, folks on the Creation Care Committee are going to be calling up parishes. I think the idea would be this spring by like April-ish or something. We would want to get a good idea, like have a lot of information and data entered. And then the idea would be that once we get everything, then sometime this summer, we would be able to generate the better reports and send them out to folks. I don't know if we have an exact date or not, Abbott. Do you?
I
Okay.
don't think so, but other than taking your suggestion, doing it as quickly as early as possible is the best. One thing that I remember you saying, Maddie, is that you can't run the report unless all the data is in. You can't compare, you can't benchmark until all the data is there. So therefore, as soon as we get as many churches in as possible, then we can start phoning folks who are not in saying, please, can we help you get the data in? So that then you can run your master report as quickly as possible so that this summer we can be back in touch with them as you're suggesting. So as soon as
Okay.
practical.
One,
So
one, one more
one of,
question.
one of the reasons why we say soon as possible is that we want these tools to still be there. So there is some pressure to do it as soon as possible. I'm sorry
Okay.
to interrupt. Go ahead.
Um, is this a one and done exercise or an ongoing thing? I mean,
I
after
think
after we get 12 months, do we just keep going or?
I think that's really up to you. I think, our goal is to get a better report for people with actual recommendations, and we know that has to be based off of 12 months. You would be welcome to do more. You would be welcome to keep using Energy Star Portfolio Manager to keep tracking your energy usage and see how it changes over time. Um, if people would like to do that, I absolutely support that. What we really just need for this specific project is those 12 months. But I think if you wanted to keep going, power to you. And a lot of people are doing that because they have to by law. Um,
Okay, thank you. I have to leave.